Welcome to another exciting edition to Grove City Hockey Presents
Hockey in our neck of the woods, and you, sir, were a very talked about person towards the end.
I'm a fifth-year senior, kind of. Well, it's my sixth year of college. Incredible.
Hey guys, we want to say thank you to our sponsor, Cut Shield, for bringing you this episode. Make sure you check them out on the link below and use the promo code for 25% off your order. Used by all 32 NHL teams and players, Cut Shield is the premier protective player clothing designed by players for players. Their innovative cut-resistant clothing has prevented serious injury to numerous players, including over 30 NHL players. Cut Shield gives you the peace of mind to go out and play without worrying about injury. Use our promo code Grove City Hockey, all lowercase and no space, for an additional 25% off your order today. Welcome to GCH Podcast. I'm your host, Ben W. Stock, and with me is a very special guest. I've got Jake Kopitzke. How you doing, brother?
I am great. How are we doing? Excited to be here.
I started to overthink your last name again, and I'm like, I got it right the first time. What am I doing?
You crushed it when we were talking beforehand, but yeah, I don't know. The bright lights came on, and
Yeah. So, Jake, you're here to tell us a little bit about your organization, the U.S. Roller Cup. Tell us a little bit about that, how you got involved with roller hockey, and what you hope to accomplish with this Roller Cup, because this is a pro level event. You have a couple other divisions as well, but the pro tournament series, I believe you have a cash prize. Am I not mistaken?
Absolutely, yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, it could be a little difficult to find the actual data on the pro prizes, but I believe that the U.S. Roller Cup for our first event here at Winter Nationals will have the largest pro prize of the winter season between the group of tournaments that happen in the winter here before summer roller season really gets going. So we'll have a $9,000 cash prize for first place, and then second place wins their entry fee back, so they'll play for free.
Oh. Hey, that's not too bad. You come in second place, and then you get your money back. So that's not.
It's not bad, right? Yeah, it's not a bad weekend for a little silver lining.
Absolutely, and then if you win, you get to take home a couple bucks.
Right. Yeah, and the winter season's not quite as robust, let's say, as the summer season. So I don't expect guys or the teams to really bring the 12 guy deep benches. So that $9,000 number kind of comes from 8 guys in a goalie to walk away with the grand in their pocket, which I think that's a pretty good weekend for a weekend of wheeling.
Oh, absolutely, and then it really helps out, especially with the times that we're in right now. Any little bit of extra cash and supplement that income that we lost from inflation, really helps.
For sure.
Out.
Right. Yeah. For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you're going to have some pretty heavy hitters coming too. I know one pro guy in particular, Ryan Marker, just took first place, or not first place, but was the scoring champion at Winter Nationals just a couple weeks ago. He's in, and then you've got quite a few, really heavy hitting pros coming in too, which made me really excited to learn more about U.S. Roller Cup.
Yeah, we're definitely really grateful for everyone who is willing to take a chance on us for our first event here, especially when it comes to the pro level. Definitely part of our strategy with being a new event and trying to break into the roller scene. When you look at the history of roller hockey, the last 20, 30 years almost, we have the same 3 brands that have been the maintaining the roller industry since then. No one's really been able to break into that world. It's been Dark Sports and State Wars for forever. So one of the strategies that I looked at in terms of legitimizing U.S. Roller Cup right out of the gate of being a legit venue for competitive roller hockey within the U.S. and North America was to have a pro prize that came out swinging and have a pro division that had some of our bigger names in it, as at least as big a names as we could attract first off. So I know Epic Lebeda, Blood and Feathers is coming, and then the Champion is bringing a team as well, and I think those are going to be where our biggest names come from. The Champion team, for what I understand, is hope I'm not misspeaking, but it's sort of like a combination of some guys from Black Ice and the Roadrunners. So you got guys like Max Halverson, Tyler Kraft, Scooter Vaughn's going to be on that team. It's going to be fun. I think we're going to have some really good hockey played this weekend. And one of the other tweaks that we're doing for our pro division that's a little different than other tournaments is that our pro final is actually going to be a 3-game series instead of just one game.
Dude, that's awesome, because like that is something that as a fan I love to see, that because now you can have, you know, the one team, you know, or both teams come out, win one game each, and then you have that final rubber match for that winner take all, which I think is phenomenal.
Well, and there's a reason why we do series in hockey instead of one game, right? How many times have you been a part of a game, whether playing as a coach or whatever, where maybe you lost 6-0 or got mercied or something, and just because you didn't know they had one guy,
right?
You didn't know their lineup, and you didn't know that, like, oh, well, they fed it right up to the wall to him quick, and he went bar down before we even knew it was happening, like 3 times in the first period, and the game was done, right? So, especially in roller, where we have such short games and it's such a possession-dominated style of play, you can have things happen in the early instances as a game that really the other team capitalizes on and shuts down, especially at the pro level, right? Where that style of play is the most highly executed. Jason, Jay Murrow teams, Black Ice, that's what they're known for, is getting an early lead on you and just shutting the door, right?
Right.
So I think one of the really cool things about the 3-game series is it allows for more breadth and nuance and complexity in the strategy that we see the two teams go at each other. Of course, teams like, Palma and Black Ice see each other every summer tons of times, so there's lots of history there, right? But when we talk about a 3-game series, especially the way that we have it orchestrated at our tournament, where you have game 1, a 1-game break, game 2, a 1-game break, and then game 3. The reason why we did that when I was shopping the idea around with some of the pro guys over the summer was they wanted to compete on an athletic basis as well.
Yeah.
So they didn't want just the one, 24-minute stop clock game where, those are great. They're so incredibly tense, exciting, but they wanted to make it a bigger scale of a competition. And one of the areas that they wanted to compete on was the athleticism of it, which I think is really, really interesting, because a lot of teams that are able to shut down the game early on and have a really heavy possession game, they may not necessarily be the same team that's able to keep up with you in a war of attrition in a really fast, really heavy forecheck game over 3 periods, because they're just not used to sustaining that kind of pressure. You know what I mean? So I think it'll open up a lot of these different, strategic variations and wrinkles that we aren't seeing currently within the pro landscape, because most tournaments are only one game.
Yeah.
Not really series, but just one game for the pro final, right? And it's hockey. That's the way it's supposed to be done. The PHOT does a 7-game series, which is phenomenal. Yeah. We'd love to fit one in, but I think within the context of a tournament environment where you're playing about 6 to 7 games anyway, 3 games is probably a solid amount.
Yeah, and I think it's great, because now not only that, but then as a spectator, you get a chance to see, okay, this is what happened in this game, and coaching will come into play too, as to who can make those adjustments on the fly, what they can do to change everything, and then of course being healthy. Injuries will take a toll.
Absolutely.
As to how each team is going to play, and then the other thing too to think about is, okay, hey, you can win one game, or you can beat one team 10 out of 11 times, but that 11th time could be where you lose that championship, in those one-on-one games. So here's a chance for the true better team to actually step up and actually win. And in my book.
I completely agree. Yeah, completely agree. And I like that you mentioned that as a fan, you're able to watch the whole series progress, right? Because one of the things that we're doing with our scheduling for the weekend, at least when it comes to Sunday, our championship Sunday, right, is that we're trying to schedule all the other finals and playoffs for the other divisions around the pro 3-game final, so that as much of the other people in attendance for the weekend are able to be there just naturally at the rink. They don't have to take time out of their day, leave the hotel early, not go get lunch somewhere, that kind of thing, right? They're going to naturally be be at the rink for this 3-game series, which becomes the crown jewel spectacle of the event by the end of the weekend, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is the pro event or any of these games going to be televised, streamed?
We're working on it. Yeah, we're working on it.
Okay.
That's the trickiest thing that we're running into, is that this facility doesn't have Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay.
So I think what we're going to end up doing is probably a combination of cell phone streams.
Okay.
Something like that. We, the No Offsides podcast guys, have some experience with streaming our local beer league with like a nice 3-cam setup and some commentary. So I think we'll do that, but it's going to be once we get on site, a process of live troubleshooting. Can we set up a hotspot? Can we do what those solutions are?
Yep. Yeah. And then the other question I had that I just had, but now I lost it. I know it's one of those things where it's like you're just rolling with it. Where is this event taking place? So that way,
Sure.
If we're in the area, we can come on down. It's one of those events that if I was close by, I would love to be there. We were talking a little bit off camera, off air, a little bit about how the southeast area the rinks have tend to dry up.
Sure.
You've lost quite a few. In my area in West Michigan, same thing. We had last I counted, there was 6 or 7 rinks, and they all just went poof. And now we're down to 1 rink for half a year. Not even half a year, for 6 weeks or 6 or 7 weeks.
Right. Yeah, you get it when they melt the ice in the summer, right?
Yeah. And it's not the sport court, but on the east side, you've got 3 or 4 rinks within 45 minutes of each other, which is amazing.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll gladly take the chances to sing the praises of SGAA, the South Gwinnett Athletic Association facility. Been going there since I was a kid. I'm honestly not sure how long it's been in operation. At least 25 years, if not 30. So it's one of those facilities that's kind of been with us since the birth of like the inline chassis almost, right? One of the big reasons, other than me being a Southeastern guy and wanting to work in a region where I know the most teams personally, and I'd have the best draw that I knew I could promote within my own circle for my first event, it's really important for me to try to plant a flag and try to reverse the tides, like you were saying, within the Southeast. The last 15 years or so, we've seen the collapse of a lot of rinks like you have in Western Michigan, right? And SGA is one of these ones that has held on. There used to be a lot more facilities, even within the greater Atlanta area. For example, Narch used to go to the Cooler all the time. They did their 1998 summer finals at the Cooler, and then they also did 2018 as their summer nationals at the Cooler as well. And that 2018 Summer Nationals Narch event was actually the last time there was a high-level competitive roller event in the Southeast region, if we can exclude Tennessee from the Southeast and not include Nashville and Wish Cup and things like that, which are, like I was saying off air, I go to those events every year. Love those events. They're great. But SGAA is the only full-time indoor roller hockey facility with 2 sheets in a 500-mile radius.
Wow.
So that kind of provides some context of us trying to bring a pro event into this region, sending that signal to those communities that are still in operation and do go to some other rinks, but maybe have lost their home rink or lost their crosstown rivals rink or something like that have really seen a lot of regression over the years, right? It's sending a signal to all of those teams and communities that there's going to be a high-level competitive roller in the Southeast, and it's going to be outside of just the summer season, because the only other event that all of us within the South have to go to is tours every summer, which is great, but it's one single event, right. And as we all know, us, if you're a hockey guy, you pretty much want to play 12 months out of the year. So. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because, you're like, okay, where's my next event going to be? I can't wait to get back out there within a couple of days after you just got done with your event.
For sure, yeah, and that's one reason why we did our event within February in this region. Started with the Winter Nationals event, is that just for our own personal appetite of the guys playing within this region, we would have a tournament maybe sometime in the late fall, and then you kind of hung them up until April,
Right.
right? And this is, the viewers don't know this about me personally, but I live in a small town of only like 3,000 people, about 20 minutes outside of the Great Smoky National Park in North Carolina. I drive an hour into Asheville, North Carolina, to play at an outdoor rink with an asphalt court, boards, no glass, chain link fence, and no roof, right? And Asheville is a temperate rainforest, so we deal with rainouts a ton. It's brutal, right? So we have a core group of guys that go to from our beer league, right? That go to these tournaments, that go to Nasty Cup and Wish Cup and all these other things, right? And it's from like sometime November, December, somewhere in there. If we can sneak in one more indoor tournament till April, that we don't get to play on sport court again.
Right.
So just knowing how things work within that region, knowing that there's a little more appetite within there, that's one of the reasons that we decided to go with our Winter Nationals event in that specific, place that a lot of people around the country are probably looking at like, I've never heard of this rink.
Right.
There's a whole crop of guys who's not used to the idea of coming to the South outside of Florida for tours or to coming to a place like Georgia, right? So I think people who do venture out and make this trip are going to be pleasantly surprised with the vibe and culture that this particular facility has. It's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, place to play anywhere because of this really unique feature that it has, where it's a double sheet facility, right? And there's like a raised mezzanine in between them that's about 4 or 5 feet up that goes around both the rinks, right?
Oh,
and it
that's
goes,
awesome.
Yeah, it goes right up to the glass.
Oh,
So
that's
the
cool.
first row, there's not necessarily, I mean, there's some bleachers and stuff, but the glass comes up to about like thigh level as you're walking around.
Mhm.
So when people are watching the game, they're hanging over the glass. You can hear every chirp, every parent screaming. It is one of the loudest, most obnoxious places to play. You'll have, programs that gang up in one corner and just go, they go, I was going to say ape. But they,
I get it.
Yeah,
which is really cool because there's not many venues that have that type of opportunity to be a part of the game like that, where you feel like you're inside the actual bowl as it's happening.
I describe it as roller hockey's closest thing to playing in fighting pits.
Oh, that's a pretty good idea. That's a pretty good analogy right there.
Yeah, I mean, God forbid, gentlemen, keep your hands in your gloves. We don't need to we don't need to get saucy out there, right? But is the closest thing to that vibe of playing in like a gladiator pit or something like that. Mm-hmm. And both rinks are sunken down like that. So it's doesn't matter which one you're playing on necessarily. The vibe is absolutely outstanding, and it's one of those places that gets absolutely ruckus when things are rocking in there. So it's a fun place to play. It's a really fun place to show off. You know what I mean? You feel like the crowd's on top of you. Even in a round robin game, it feels like big moments. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's going to be one of those where I'm really excited as someone who's played there since I was, had 3 wheels on my skate. Mm-hmm. That I'm excited for other people around the country to come see this facility, even though it's an older mom and pop feel. It's not going to be the nicest place you've ever been, but it's a hell of a barn.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because you can't beat those type of environments. I remember one of my back in my pro days going to Chicago at what was the name of that? It was the Polar. I can't think of it now. And I know I talked about it on a previous episode, but you get there and you literally you go inside Santa's village. And it was like, great. Yeah, I'm not joking. Like you walk in and you just start seeing like reindeer, elves, all of these little cool knickknack things, and it's almost kind of like a mini putt type feel.
Sure.
With all of these Christmas decorations. And I want to say it was the Polar Dome, but it was a beautiful wood barn. old school ice hockey rink that they converted into roller. The gentleman that had been doing all of this major work, and then within probably a couple of weeks after, it was shut down. It was condemned, and
Yeah.
we felt so bad. And that was probably one of the coolest barns that I've ever been a part of. It was great because on the one side you had everything you needed for your TV. And it was one of those ones where the event that I was with was in Major League Roller Hockey. They interviewed us. I was coaching at that time, and it was such a cool experience to be a part of that, and then to have that get taken away from Chicago. Shortly after it happened, very similar to the one rink in Detroit where they the circus was coming to town. They tried to pull some permits, and the health inspector and all of these guys, the city inspectors, came out and were like, "Oh yeah, this isn't good." And so then they had to and they were really trying to really get everything all up and up, on the up to code and everything. It just couldn't happen.
It's the loss of our culture.
Yeah.
They don't just make these places in a corporate laboratory.
Yeah,
they have to come out of years of frustration and mom and pop efforts, and
Well, and the thing is, man, come on, you have people who are putting in the effort. Why take away that dream? Help them out. Help them, point them in the right direction. Hey, this is what we can give you a little more time, but this is what you got to do.
Sure.
But the type of society that we live in these days, back then. It just wasn't something that they were willing to work with.
Yeah, it's a bummer. It's a bummer, right? But the last 20 years or so, unfortunately, is littered with a lot of these stories of rinks closing, right?
Yeah, but then you have and then you got Nasher, who's building his Heat Wave Arena outside of Columbus, or in Columbus, and that, like you said, that thing is going to be insanely good. He's going to get the steel mat floors in.
Huge fan of the I always call it floor to ceiling, but that doesn't actually make sense. But the full length glass.
Yeah.
Huge fan of that. I actually feel like that should be like the look of roller. Or if not quite the full length, the way that the Taylor Sportsplex has it, where the first 18 inches are boards. I bet it's easier for goalies to see the puck all the way around the rink like that than is the full length. But
it really is. I know. I think, what is it? Is it Salt Creek now out in Chicago? That rink is very similar to that. That was the first time that I had played with that, like you said, that floor to ceiling type glass. And I know Palma out there in Vegas and in the rinks, they utilize that style of glass too.
Yeah, one of the facilities I grew up playing at, that's now XL Sports in Apex, North Carolina, the Raleigh area, has that. And one of the things that I always liked about it as a player is that when you have that full pane of glass, it's completely consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the cowl that you got to watch out for that's going to accidentally send pucks out. You don't have differences in where the plastic's warped, right? Oh man, I hit the steel post. I had extra ping on it. Sorry. It was just nice and perfectly consistent. That just made it really easy to send passes out of the zone and stuff like that. So I'm a huge fan of that. And I think as a spectator too, it's just better. To be able to see the play at the feet right in front of you, it's just better.
Well, yeah, and then you don't have to worry about, okay, now where's the puck at? Because now I can't see the puck. If it's right in front of you, you still have that 360-degree view in front of you, no matter what you're doing. So it's pretty cool to see that. So now, tell us a little bit about how the U.S. Roller Cup came into existence. What was your idea? I know you said that off air that this is kind of like re-kickstarting the family business. Tell us a little bit about that. But what was the premise of, okay, hey man, I really got to get back into this?
Sure, yeah. So growing up, my family ran a tournament series in the Southeast called Coastal Cup. I probably wouldn't expect too many people in your region to
I've heard of it.
Oh, okay, right on. Yeah, it really was just a Southeastern, only a couple states, like a travel light youth organization, but that was my life growing up. And every weekend a different rink, either scorekeeping or reffing or working the tournament booth or playing on 1, 2, or 3 teams just because I had downtime and they needed an extra guy or whatever. That was the life growing up as a rink rat.
Yeah.
So there was definitely a part of me coming into an adult once I wanted to figure out different ways that I could build things that left meaning behind and created meaning for other people. For me, that was getting back into hockey. There was a period of about 8 years of my life where I drifted away from the sport. That's when I was going to college, going through grad school, and building a career in my life outside of hockey. I work in mental health. I'm a psychologist. I've done a number of different things in that field. So when I was going through all that education, unfortunately, the places that I went to school and the first places that I worked were just really far away from hockey rinks. And that added up to about 8 years of time. So when I got back into the sport, after taking 8 years off or so, I had this whole rekindling of inspiration and rediscovered my love for the sport again. And I really started to think about what hockey meant for me in my life, right, growing up, and the fact that not only was I a hockey player and a dedicated, travel hockey player that would have played any tournament you thrown at me, but it was the family business, right? So it dominated every single aspect of our life, to the point where we didn't really know the kids in our neighborhood because we weren't home. We were at a hockey rink somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so hockey became the only community that I ever knew. It was the only sense of home outside of the home, right, that I had ever really felt, right? So when I got back into the sport and it came time to decide what I wanted to do with all these feelings of inspiration and whatnot, I decided that I wanted to try to fix what I felt like were some of the structural issues within roller hockey for why, over the past 20 years, having been in the sport at all the different levels that I had, why I think roller hockey had seen the regression that it has over the last 20 years, right? And now there's a bit of a pickup essentially since COVID, where roller's gotten a little bit more popular. But if we can kind of take that out of context, when you look at roller hockey from 2000 to 2021, 2000 to 2020, it is a story largely of regression, right? And it's a story, like we were saying earlier, of rinks closing and teams folding and programs, stopping, and less signups for learn to play. Top to bottom, it's a regression of the sport. One of the stats that I actually like to point to when I bring up this is a topic of conversation is that from 1990 to 2000, roller hockey gear outsold every other category of sporting equipment in the United States, even baseball equipment. This is during the steroid era of baseball, of Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, right? Although baseball couldn't be bigger, and yet roller hockey gear was outselling baseball gear. But from 2000 to 2010, roller hockey gear was the single largest declining sector of sporting equipment in the United States, right? And if we look at a bunch of other things that happened, there's the collapse of RHI, there's, all of these other different things, right? But I think ultimately the problem was that roller hockey exploded because there was the promise of this brave new world, right? Of you could have all of the wonder and benefits of ice hockey, but at a quarter of the cost with an eighth of the complications and yada yada, right? That's a big reason why it exploded, because people saw ice hockey and removed the main complication of ice hockey, which is the ice.
Yep.
Right, and throughout the 90s, roller was exploding, especially wherever Wayne Gretzky went. I think it's kind of interesting that when you look at 3 of the hotbeds of roller hockey that have sustained, it's just where Wayne Gretzky played in the 90s.
Right.
Southern California, St. Louis, and then, the greater New York area, right?
Yep.
So I think ultimately the big problem was that we got all of these people into the sport, but we never created this next level of opportunity for all of these people who came into the sport. We never, probably from an outside perspective looking in, legitimized the sport of roller hockey with our infrastructure, with our systems, in a way that it happened in all these other sports, right? Instead, we have these competing forces that are tearing things apart in different directions, right? And I think that once we sort of hit our second generation of roller hockey, the fact that we couldn't offer anything more than an extremely fun, extremely fulfilling, highly competitive alternative sport is mainly why we saw the regression that we did, especially when you consider that the NHL in that time period has only expanded and added teams and gotten into new markets, right? It's only become a bigger product. And then we've also had this competition of lacrosse, whereas especially within the Southeast region, lacrosse exploded over the last 20 years, right? And so I remember seeing personally a lot of really, really good high-end roller athletes go from roller hockey to lacrosse because the skill sets were so similar. And their parents were essentially saying to them, like, look, kid, this roller hockey stuff is great. And you can play 3 tournaments a year when you're not busy with lacrosse. But ultimately, what we're going to put our time and energy and resources into as a family is the thing that's going to pay off for you in the long run and help towards building the rest of your life, which at that point meant lacrosse for a lot of kids, right? And I know kids personally who left roller hockey and only engaged with it at a really minor level who went on to get lacrosse scholarships, right? Went on to play D1 in lacrosse somewhere and then set up what the next chapters of their life, right? And that's ultimately what parents care about. So one of the orientations that I think is much different about the way I look at US Roller Cup versus the rest of the tournament field right now is I think the rest of roller hockey has been built on this idea of trying to sell to the players, meaning trying to sell, we have the highest level of competition with the best teams from all over the planet. It's going to be the best, bang for your buck, that kind of thing. And they've done an absolutely tremendous job at selling and marketing on those levels. Like, right, you look at Narch and the global pull that they have, teams from all over the world. You look at State Wars and the way that Tim was able to design a system where kids banded up from like brilliant ideas and tremendous execution of the way that those businesses have been run for the past 25, 30 years, right? But the change that I want to do with US Roller Cup is instead of marketing towards the players, start marketing towards the parents. Because ultimately the parents are the ones who are making the decisions that we as an ecosystem who rely on these families to spend their dollars, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? It's mom and dad saying, how does this pay off for our kid? Because we're willing to spend 14 weekends on the road and put X amount of our budget towards it, but it's got to go to something, or at least potentially go to something. How many kids have you seen, instead of playing roller hockey, are willing to go be third line on a AA ice team because the parents are able to sustain some level of this might pay off somewhere? Right. So what I came up with that essentially led to US Roller Cup, as I'm getting back into hockey, right? Going to tournaments again, checking out the national tournament scene, going to tours, this kind of stuff. I mean, like, man, what is the state of affairs? What's the state of the union? How are things? How's youth? How's adults? What do demographics look like? What are the motivations? How are people spending their time, money? Like all of this, right? I came up with the idea of what if there was a tournament series that took its prize money and used it as a college scholarship? Right? Could this potentially be a mechanism that changes this, what I consider the fundamental flaw of roller hockey, is that we didn't build the systems and infrastructure needed to support this next level of opportunity, right? And I would love to say that the next step is pro and we're going to fill stadiums and guys are going to make, $8 million a year playing roller hockey. That's not where I was able to put my thumbs on the scales, right? I don't have access to that kind of capital. RHI tried it. It turns out that doing it from top down is not a great idea. You got to go from the bottom up, right? But what I realized I could do is I could use my experience of knowing how to run tournaments, and most importantly, knowing the life that goes into running tournaments and traveling around the country and navigating all the different dynamics and politics of the different rinks and the different tournaments and the different teams and all of that kind of stuff. Since that was the world that I grew up in, I felt very comfortable going, if I'm going to try to put my thumbs on the scale in some way, I think going through the means of starting a tournament industry or a tournament business, right? And trying to compete on the national level and then taking a percentage of our revenue and using that to create college scholarships. If that's the way that I could then create, revolutionary, impactful change within roller hockey, because that's essentially the goal, is to reshape our systems and infrastructure within roller hockey so that they become more sustainable, resilient, and empowering towards creating a future for the next generation of players. And I think that is what ultimately solves this issue of rinks closing, teams folding, players not signing up, right? Because what we've seen is if you can get a kid through to 18 and they're still into playing hockey, they're going to play beer league until the day their knees fall apart, right?
Oh yeah.
Without a
And
doubt.
then some.
Right?
Yeah, and then some. And the crazy thing is, like, and with a lot of the ice guys that I've had come on, that, you know, hey, they go, am I gonna either continue to play ice or am I gonna play roller? They generally drift towards roller because it's much easier on the body. You're able to play at a high competitive level for a lot longer, and you know, because you don't have to worry about getting checked, you don't have to worry about getting hit, you don't have to worry about all those. I mean, you still have the cheap shots here and there, but it's few and far between.
Well, and you know what it is too? It's more touches.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you get your puck possession and all that, and it's all about, you know, like you said, the touches, the possession, you know, all of that. You put that in together, and what you're seeing is like, you know, hey, I can either beat the hell out of my body, or I can still do the exact same thing as what I was doing on ice, and I have to worry about getting beaten up.
Absolutely, you know? Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen it personally countless times. But the high level ice guy who's not tried roller before and comes and tries roller, and you see the light go off in his head, he goes, "Oh,
yeah,
I can." There's a version of hockey where it's just the style I want to play. I don't have to deal with the bullshit. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can. Yeah,
you're good.
Okay,
you're good.
I don't have to deal with the bullshit. You know, I don't have to deal with the fourth line guy who's just going to try to run me into the wall. We can just cycle and make saucer passes and toeies and go bar down. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right.
Shut up and sign me up. That's exactly what I hear.
Right. So, you know, my mom had a boyfriend who, for a long time when we were growing up, he was actually the owner of Coastal Cup, right? And he also ran Central Carolina Hockey, which was like the hockey organization in Central North Carolina. But he did learn to play, and he did like coached Narcs Platinum teams as well. So he did absolutely everything, right? Yeah. He actually at two separate times built the largest learn to play programs in the nation at the facility that I grew up at. But so. There was a team for a little bit that my older brother played on called the Hyper Hurricanes, which was a combination of kids out of North Carolina in the like 90 to 92 age bracket, right? And his favorite age group to coach was 16U.
Okay. Because
he felt after 16U, you ran into too many issues of guys getting into cars, girls, and putting things in their body they probably shouldn't be, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so 16 was this magic window for him in his eyes of like, that's matches your highest level of like competitive and athletic output before you start to be distracted, because you're starting to figure out that this roller hockey stuff doesn't really go anywhere after you hit 18, right? So that 16 age group was his magic window where he felt like that was sort of the peak of what you're looking at for competitive youth roller. Obviously, the 18U and 21U programs can be very robust, but the thing is, they're far fewer in number than your 16U programs are, right? So all of, you know, what I'm setting out to do with US Roller Cup is not only to provide, like we were saying earlier, a really competitive pro event and do all the other things well and even better if we can than the other tournaments are, but we're really trying to, like I was saying, market towards the parents, right?
Yeah.
And that's what got us to the strategy of we're going to do roughly 30% of our revenue that we get from US Roller Cup is going to be donated, right? And so something that we haven't touched on yet so far is that when I was in the process of looking into the different legalities of providing scholarships and all this kind of stuff, right, as I was setting up the US Roller Cup, I came to realize that it would be better for me to set up a nonprofit to handle the scholarships and have US Roller Cup be a separate private business, right? Yeah. And so the nonprofit that handles the scholarships is called the College Roller Foundation. And the College Roller Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit tax-exempt organization. It's 100% pass-through, meaning that no one who works on it will get a dime off of it, right? It exists to raise and distribute funds to deserving college roller hockey student athletes, right? And the reason why I came up with this structure of this private and nonprofit system here, right, is because the nonprofit structure gives me a lot of tools financially that doing things through a private business I just couldn't do, right? So as a private business, I can take whatever amount of money I want that we've generated and just give it away to scholarships however I please. There's really not a lot of regulation as far as that goes, right? But that's only me. I don't have the ability to invite anyone into that system, right? If I go the route of a nonprofit, what I have the ability to do is I have the ability to build a broader infrastructure so that if other tournament series see what I'm doing and they believe that it has a positive impact on the sport and they want to get involved, they don't have to look up and go through all the jumping through the hoops and talking to the lawyers, how to set up scholarships and what are the tax implications and all that. We've built the infrastructure for them, right? So it's as easy as sending an email, picking up the phone, making a phone call, and any of the other tournament industries can adopt this system overnight, essentially, right? But I think we get into the next thing I think is even cooler, right? Is that one of the financial mechanisms that I have with the nonprofit is that you're able to raise funds through private donations, raffles, selling of merchandise, things like this, right? So with that, with the nonprofit infrastructure for the funds that I raise through all other means, I can then distribute that through the other competitions that host events for the College Roller Foundation, right? So there's going to be two pools of money. One that I call the host pool, one I call the general pool, right? And the host pool is money donated by parties that I refer to as host partners. Host partners are organizations that are willing to host events where college teams are able to compete for these scholarships, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that's a pretty undefined term right now on purpose. A lot of the infrastructure of the College Roller Foundation is very open-ended right now because I want anyone out there who hears this and believes in this vision to be able to come on board as easily as possible, right? So a host partner obviously is going to be US Roller Cup. A host partner could also as well be Tours, NARCH, State Wars. A host partner could be a more regional organization like MIHA, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
One of the cool things that will allow host partners to do is actually have regional restrictions on their events at how they give out money. So if an organization like MIHA wanted to participate in this, they could only have teams that, colleges within that region be eligible to play in that event. So it'd be a way for local organizations to raise and distribute funds within their own sort of region if they view that as an important way to keep roller hockey sustainable, right? To be a host partner, really the two things that you got to do is agree to have a fair competition for teams to compete for money. You can even decide how the money gets awarded, meaning if you want it all to go to first place, great. If you're going to have to give out a certain amount for each win, great. However you want. It's just got to be fair, right? And then the other thing is you got to donate money. So you got to buy in a little bit to be a host partner. But there aren't minimums or maximums that you need to do. Right. So the host partner pool will accumulate over the length of a calendar year, fiscal year. Right.
Okay.
And let's say that over that time, the host pool gets up to be $100,000. Right. And let's just, for the sake of argument, say that MIHA has donated $50,000 to that host pool. Right. We're responsible for 50% of it. So then at the same time, we're also raising money through the general pool, which is things like private donations, peer-to-peer letter campaigns, the selling of merchandise, raffles, things like that, right?
Yeah.
That money, let's say over this same time period, also went to $100,000.
Okay.
MIHA would be able to take 50% of the money from the general pool and pass that out at their events as well. So for no cost no cost within the context if you're taking your pro prize and just swapping it over for college scholarship, but for an equivalent percentage, right, you're able to amplify the impact you make with creating college scholarships through the general pool, right? So instead of just giving out $50,000 at your event, you're able to give out $100,000 at your event. Now, the money will never actually go directly back to any of the host partners. So it isn't like the College Roller Foundation is raising this money, raising the general pool, and then we're going to be cutting checks to all these private companies. that's not the way that it will work. The money will go from the College Roller Foundation directly to the players who get the scholarships, right?
Okay.
But the reason why this was designed this way is it creates positive reinforcements for any of the organizations out there who are potentially looking to get into the system, right? And that was designed with the intention of getting organizations like Narch Tours and State Wars to buy into this, right? So when I was saying earlier, no cost, what I was referencing is that if Narch is going to take their pro prize, and let's just say it's 25 grand,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of doing that, they're going to create a college scholarship. Doing so gives them access to this entire other pool of money, which they're then able to amplify how they market their event, the draw that they're able to pull in, because now instead of doing 25 grand, it's now 50 grand. That kind of, right?
Yeah.
So the other really cool thing that we're able to do with the nonprofit infrastructure, right, is that nonprofits often have donor tiers for their higher level donors, right? And the reason why that is because people who engage in philanthropy really like to use it as a badge of honor. They like to show, their dedication to their communities. They like people to know and what they've done, right? So within the College Roller Foundation, instead of donor tiers, we refer to them as builder tiers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these tiers track all of the private donations that people have sent us, whether it's an organization or a private individual, right? They either are able to climb these builder tier levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what they do is they represent a direct contribution that an individual organization has towards building this future for the next generation of roller hockey athletes, because the money will go directly towards creating scholarships, right?
Yeah.
And so these builder tiers will be, publicly displayed essentially, right? So what they will also do is they will work as signifiers within the market to all the roller hockey buyers, right? Because if you are someone who makes money off of roller hockey now, instead of your old sponsorship means, right? Because as I was going through the process of setting up the US Roller Cup and getting sponsors, the one refrain I heard from pretty much every single manufacturer that we talked to is, why the hell should we sponsor you? We give XYZ 1, 2, and 3, and we don't get anything back, right? We feel like the roller buyer knows the roller market, and that sponsoring tournaments is an ineffective way for us to stand out, right? So the builder tier system was created in part as a way for brands to stand out within the marketplace, because now they can proudly display, we are a gold level builder of the College Roller Foundation. We're a platinum level builder. We've put this exact amount of money into college scholarships, right? Which will then serve as a signal to buyers within the marketplace of, oh, okay, do I want to buy these wheels or those wheels? Well, who really gives back to the sport? Do I want to go to this tournament or that tournament? Well, that one is, a platinum level builder, and this one's not even on the scale, right? Where do I really want my dollars to be reinvested within the sport? It's able to create very, very clear ways for people to behave in order to support this new system going forward, right? Which is this idea that we can use some of the private equity developed from roller hockey, which is this small, tightly knit community of incredibly passionate people, and redirect that back into the sport so that those same people can see their kids go to college. And I think that's an incredibly powerful idea that revolutionizes the way that we do everything in roller.
Yeah, and not only that, but then it also it makes you look at, okay, hey, where's my dollar gonna be most effective? Because is it going in somebody else's pocket, or is it going back to the sport that I love? And and I don't know about you, but I would rather see my dollar get invested in the sport that I love than to help some Joe Schmo, who just happened to have a couple extra bucks to be able to put on this event. Make some extra dough. And
early I referenced how no one's broken into the roller hockey industry in 30 years. Well, 20 years, because State Wars this is their 20 years. So no one's broken in 20 years. In terms of being a big national level tournament series that people consider as one of, the summer national pro championship kind of things, right? I think that's because no one's figured out how to a way to create any more value within the roller hockey space. One of the questions that I get a lot is why are you doing this? Why do you think you can add value to the space? We already have these 3 things. There's an element to that question that I think is a little bit of like, hey, don't rock the boat. This is pretty fragile, right?
Right.
And I don't think that that's wrong in some sense. But for me, it's a difference of perspective, right? And I think that comes from a scarcity mindset, and I can understand perfectly where that comes from, because it comes from like what I call tournament director math, which is like, how much does the rink cost? How much do refs cost? How many teams can I get? How many games is that going to be? How much money am I actually going to make? Like, does any of this make sense, right? And it comes from that idea, like that comes from a scarcity mindset, because it's operating this idea that you have a finite resource that you can harvest. And that resource that you're harvesting is people's willingness to play competitive travel roller hockey, right? Yeah. And the perspective that I come from is one of abundance. So instead of looking at it like there's a certain amount of eggs to collect out there, you got to be the shiniest egg collector to collect all the eggs, right? The way that I look at it is that value is instead created by solving other people's problems. Right. And I think when you look at it from that perspective, that we instead are living in a situation of abundance opposed to scarcity, because people never run out of problems. Right. And through that lens, the problem that the legacy tournament industry has been able to solve is providing a venue for high level competitive roller hockey, which is a great problem to solve, and they've solved it extremely well. But the problem that U.S. Roller Cup is looking to solve is how can parents use competitive recreational youth athletics to invest in their child's future, which is a problem that way, way, way more families out there are actually trying to solve. And so I think through that lens, that's how we create more value, and we're able to break into the tournament industry, because we have a different perspective on things, and we're doing more than just trying to drop the gnarliest pucks we can. Right.
Yeah, and another thing that I've noticed too is that those three events that you've been talking about, they're kind of regionalized now.
Absolutely.
You know, you got tours out of the South, you know, in Florida. You've got Narch, which tends to be out in Cali, or in St. Louis. It tends to flip flop back and forth a little bit there, and then you have you know, State Wars, which tends to be a predominantly more of a Midwestern area, you know, from time to time. You know, so it interesting to see, you know, and that was one of the couple of things that I've noticed talking to some of the other pro guys, is that they would like to see more of not necessarily a global, because you've got the Sparta Cup, you've got the Africa Cup, you've got you know, the World Skate Games coming up.
Sure.
You know, all of these games, you know, but those are overseas. You know, not many people can fork up the funds to fly to Africa, which is a $1,200 to $1,300 ticket, you know, round trip. Sure. Right there. But once you get there, hands down, it'll be one of the best trips you'll ever take. But the same thing with the Sparta Cup. You know, you fly over to Germany, Switzerland, all of those countries, Spain, France, you know, Italy, all have great inline hockey, you know, in their country, where they have legit pro leagues and teams and everything like that, where they have just a cap on a number of foreign players that they can have. You know, so it'd be nice to see, you know, more of a not I don't want to say regionalized, but more of a centralized different locations. You know, hey, we're going to be in Michigan this week, and then next week we're going to be down in Texas, or we're going to be in New York, or we're going to be in Georgia. You know, we're going to be in Montana, Colorado. You know, just different places, you know, something that are outside of the norm.
Regular and structured and comprehensive, right? It's, you know, it's like what I was saying a second ago about tournament director math and scarcity. When we look at how regional the tournament industry has become, Narch being primarily California based, Tours is down at, you know, that rink rumored for however long, right? State Wars kind of fills in the middle.
Yep.
Excuse me. A lot of that comes from that sort of scarcity mindset. A lot of that comes from looking at it like, well, I make my nut at nationals, and then so my regional tournaments are really like a derivative function of how many teams I could send to nationals. So it's not necessarily about just going into a rink and making money just because I can cobble together whatever 40 teams are available. It's more about are you supporting this ultimate end product that really is the point of this brand, right? Which is the big summer nationals, right? And that's why we've seen a huge regression in these different markets. You could even see different tournaments. Oftentimes someone will say, "Hey, when are you coming down here? When are you coming down there?" And they say, "Are you going to send me enough teams?" And they get in bickering in the comments with people about this very thing, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look at what I consider the roller markets of the U.S., right? So when you were saying a second ago, it would be great if we had sort of regular stops in each of these different places, right? There's only 12. And by that, I mean 2 or 3 sheet facilities indoor facilities within the U.S. There's only about 12 of them left. It's not that many, right?
I know. That's the crazy thing.
Right. But so, a big part of this is when you look at like what it means to be a tournament director and like, what does that life look like? If you talk about, okay, I'm going to have to do, let's call it 14 events, mm-hmm. right? But they're going to be from April to July. Yeah. Because I can't do it within the ice hockey season, right? Mm-hmm. This is another one of these components that's led to the state of roller where we're at right now, where we have tournaments that are so few and far between. We don't have like this robust system. It's not like it was 20 years ago where you had to qualify and they went to, every rink that they could to try to get as many teams to qualify. Like these things don't exist anymore because they haven't been able to pull the teams during ice hockey season. The youth teams especially, right? You can have an adult tournament in the Northeast in November or October. Narch just did just that this past year, right?
Yep.
But people won't do a youth tournament because they know they can't compete directly head-to-head with ice hockey, right? And so that's another thing where I think U.S. Roller Cup is going to be different. And that's definitely one of our goals, is that with this idea of at U.S. Roller Cup events, ideally we'll have the college teams competing there in a college division as well. That's something we're still ironing out exactly what that's going to look like, right? But if you want your kid, and they play hockey, if you want your kid to play college, and U.S. Roller Cup comes to your region once a year, and you got another ice tournament versus U.S. Roller Cup, you should be playing U.S. Roller Cup. Because the college teams are going to be scouting that event as well. And there's going to be just as much of a chance for your kid to get a scholarship there, and probably even more so because there's less competition right now in roller than at just another regional qualifier ice event for, some whatever, right? And so that's another one of these fundamental changes that we're really trying to strive for that's different about U.S. Roller Cup that I think will be able to give us that, starting in October, going to July, full season, we're going everywhere, hitting all the markets, giving a lot of teams a chance to qualify, having that more of a robust, truly national feel opposed to these high-level tournaments that have a lot of regional loyalty and bias that don't move a ton. Yeah. Because right now, East Coast goes to Tours, West Coast goes to Narch, and then you kind of meet in the middle at State Wars.
For State Wars, yep.
Right.
So now what is U.S. Roller Cup doing to get involved with the collegiate roller hockey organization, with the NCRHA, the ECHRA, all of those, there's 11 divisions or something like that. It's crazy.
Think about that, right? 11 divisions, 12 ranks.
Yeah.
Like you could line up so perfectly for me to come through and do an event where we drop off scholarships in each one of those regions once or twice a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, I sort of cut you off a little bit, but it'd be a little premature for me to say that I'm in discussions with the NCRHA. Okay. There has been some information communicated between both parties, and what I'm going to tell you right now, the NCRHA knows as well. And it's something that I'm okay with anyone knowing, right? So the NCRHA kind of knows about what we're planning on doing with U.S. Roller Cup and the College Roller Foundation and all that. They also know that my plan with those two entities is to generate like an initial lump sum, so to speak, for an initial event that's a considerable amount, and then approach them with that and try to figure out some sort of plan. So we haven't quite figured out something, but the idea would be for me to, get a pool of money generated and then be able to go, hey, we got 50 grand in scholarships that we're willing to give out at a tournament. Look, what's this look like? Let's figure this out.
Yeah.
So they kind of know that's where we're at, and we're kind of waiting for things to progress. But
Okay.
ideally, I think it'd be great if we found a way to work the NCRHA within all this. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of the things that have been built around this, a lot of the structure, right, is very open-ended because, well, on one hand, I could just do this all through US Roller Cup and compete head-to-head directly with everybody and expect no one to get on board with me.
Right.
I believe in my heart of hearts that what's ultimately best for roller hockey is for as many people to get onto this page as possible. So it means, working with the NCRHA, it means working with Darts Tours and State Wars and MIHA and EHAs and ECHO and all of these different organizations all around the country because, we all got to pull in the same direction, which has not happened thus far within roller hockey, right? All these different things pull in different directions, just like we were talking about with the summer national system. Like, who's the national champion? Who's the 2023 national champion?
Yeah, because right now you're looking at 3 different champions. You have the Tours champion, the Tour Roadrunners. You got the State Wars champion. You have the the Palma Invitational, and then you have the Narch champion. I mean, there's just it could like who is the best of the best, and that was another thing that I had mentioned on a separate podcast with another couple of pro guys was how hard is it to get those 3 champions to get together for another tournament-based event, for another cash prize, to get, so yeah, let's just off the top of my head. So you got Palma, you've got Black Ice, and you got the Tour Roadrunners, or even better yet, Car Shield would be another one. You get those 3, 3 or 4 teams together from, and have that tournament, or not tournament, but that series based event. And then that could be your US national champion, and then send them overseas to kind of play. But the other thing too that was mentioned is the timing. Because again, just like you were saying, you're competing with ice, you're competing with the European leagues, you're competing with the all of these other events, and the roller hockey season is such a short span. I think it's 6-7 weeks, if that.
It's what, Memorial to Labor Day if you're lucky.
Yeah, which is, I think that's 5 weeks, or 5, 6 or 7 weeks. Yeah. So, there's a lot to think about, a lot to work out, but the drive and the passion is there. And especially from a spectator fan, I geek out about roller. I love it. It's something I want to see. I hope there's a lot of you guys want to see it too. And hopefully we can make it happen someday.
Yeah. And it's like you said, there's a lot of what I would say is potential out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of really passionate people who are willing to do a lot of extra in their lives, whether it's coach youth programs or run an Instagram account that, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people out there who are passionate and want to see a better version of roller hockey, meaning a better world for roller hockey, one that's more robust, one that has better systems, one that has, better media, one that has broader participation, one that has, more women playing, all of these different things. I think that's out there. And I think a big reason why we haven't achieved more is because we're pulling in different directions. So I think if we can
definitely agree with you,
common goal, we can start to collectively use that potential in the same direction and create some real big change. Like one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, though, but the College Roller Foundation has something that we call the Women's College Roller Initiative, which is our attempt to raise $10,000 as an initial sum of money for women's college roller hockey, which does not currently exist. The idea being that if we can get a substantial enough prize, maybe some teams will form and we can begin the foundations of women's college roller hockey. Because like I was saying at the top of the hour, I believe that we need to create solutions that make roller hockey more resilient, sustainable, and empowering, right? And getting more women and girls in the sport is a huge means to that goal. Just you look from the simple fact that if we can double the amount of rink time that we have booked, then roller hockey across the board is in a much healthier spot.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't let's cap this episode off right here, because what we'll do is we'll get you back on. We'll actually talk about women's roller hockey. I'm going to reach out to a couple girls and see if we can't get them on, and let's have like a little round table discussion and see what happens. I mean, you just never know. I know that's something that I've kind of been wanting to gear towards, is get that spotlight on women's roller, because I just had a daughter, and I want her to know that, hey, thank you, if you do want to play hockey, it doesn't necessarily have to be ice, but there is a possibility to play roller hockey, and who knows what's going to happen in the next 20 years for that.
Well, I was going to say, now's the time, right? Look at the PWHL.
Yeah, I mean, you got exposure, you got time. My oldest is 4, but my youngest is she'll be 6 months on Thursday. So it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, if we don't start thinking about the future now, then what's gonna happen? So let's
Absolutely.
give it.
Yeah, I believe that just in terms of how probably all sports, but especially this one operates, that you need to focus your energies the most on getting people in the door, your learn to plays, right? And then whatever your highest level of competitive output is on the other end of that spectrum, because once you get them in the door, that is going to pull them through, and you're going to have everything else in the middle fill in, right? All your house leagues, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. Well, Jake, I cannot thank you enough for shooting the breeze with me on the U.S. Roller Cup and talking about the college initiative, college scholarship initiative that you got going on. And again, I cannot wait to get you back on the pod, because I really want to talk to you more about this. But we are pressed for time. So
for sure, yeah. Thank you so much for having me on, man. And I'm excited to come back. We're gonna have no problem filling some time. So
oh yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, again, I'm Ben W. Stock. I've got Jake Kopitzke. I think I got it right this time.
Yeah, you did.
I'm like, I didn't have to think about it. So all right, so yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode of GCH Podcast. We're gonna catch you guys on the flip side.